Happy Devil's Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 255, titled Jake the Snake Allen. Streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, X Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Pucks and Pitchforks blog editor-in-chief, Nick Villano. We got a special guest coming up a little bit later from pucksandpitchforks.com and the Locked On Devils, Trey Matthews, talking Devils hockey. Devils 6 points out? Are they still 6 points out? I mean,
I don't even look anymore, Sam. What's the point?
Are you that depressed?
I'm going to be honest. So Matt Rempe returned, and he spoke to the media today, and his comments were putrid. Like, the people acted like, it's like, oh, he learned his lesson. No, he didn't. He said he's not going to change the way he plays, and he's sad that somebody got hurt. But he's not going to change the way he plays. So I'm just...
You know what, Nick? Coincidentally,
I'm sick to my stomach that we haven't beat this dirtbag team this year. Like, I'm just going to be straight about it. Like, the fact that we haven't beaten the Rangers.
I actually drafted up a tweet in response to James Nichols' article about Rempe. I mean, there were, it was, I think, Molly Walker, New York Post, that interview.
I don't like Molly. This has nothing to do with Molly. I know I had to tweet her tweets. She was just the one that was writing it. So, nothing to do with Molly. I feel bad that maybe because I think I was one of the first to tweet about it because I follow Molly and she's somebody I really want on the show. But so I will say that. Don't attack Molly. She didn't do it.
No, I wasn't attacking Molly.
I know you weren't. I was talking to the universe.
I wanted to attack Rempe and Laviolette, both of them. Because first off, by reading it, I now I want the audio version. They sounded like a bunch of phonies, both of them. They had 2 weeks to choreograph a response, to an interview. I don't know. I'm not buying any of it. That's all I have to say. I actually drafted a tweet and I forgot to let you read it before I put it out because I don't want to get myself in trouble. But basically,
so what did James Nichols say? I didn't see that part.
He didn't say anything. He just basically reported that this is what they're saying. Piggybacking off of Molly Walker's, article and all that. And, again, I'm not trying to sound like a homer here, but it's a little too late. And, I'll
give him the benefit of the doubt. This is the first time he's been able to talk, but just on that point. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm on one.
Why isn't he able to talk?
He was suspended. There's certain rules about speaking when you're suspended.
Okay, fair enough. But, anyway, I'm not buying it. I think he's trying to diffuse it because he knows April 3rd is coming up in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. So, and are the Devils going to do anything about it? That's another story. I mean, that's another topic for another day if they would. I just, right now, I mean, last week we got trolled by these Ranger fans, and, but I'll say it right now. I think both are responsible. At the fact that, the matter is Siegenthaler's still out, and this guy gets to play. They need to change the punishments. It should be eye for an eye.
My conspiracy theory is that his hit knocked Bastian out, too. Calling that a clean hit, like, you hit him in the head. Like, clean hits aren't in the head. I don't care what the situation is. I don't care. I don't care if I'm literally bent over like this. Don't hit. You can't. You have to be in control of your body to not hit people in the head, or don't play hockey. If you can't do that, like here's where I'm at, and I'm sorry. I told you I'm beyond on this. I'm beyond on this. Mm-hmm. The fact that you said you thought you hit the wall when you elbowed a guy in the head, like imagine if you did that in a court of law. They would arrest you right there. You're a danger to society. You're a danger to the sport. Get out of the sport. If you can't figure out the difference between glass and somebody's head, get out of the sport.
Well, that plus the instruction, why he didn't answer the bell. He had instructions. Oh, that's where I'm bringing Laviolette into because I get criticized for it. But Laviolette is damn well responsible for this. He knows exactly what he's doing.
If he sits there and says you're not going to fight tonight, and then He does that. That's what he does. Yeah. Well, you got blood on your hands. But anyway, I don't even want to give him the.
I don't know how we got on this topic, but I
came in mad about it. I've been mad about it all day, and I know, rent free, dumb crap. No, like that stuff is so stupid. Everybody's like, well, you rooted for Scott Stevens. None of us knew anything about this when Scott Stevens was in the league, including Scott Stevens. I remember specifically. I'm trying to remember who it was. But it was a guy in Carolina got hit so hard,
Shane Willis,
that he was stumbling to the bench.
Oh,
and they were laughing.
That's Ron Francis.
Yeah, and they were laughing about it because it was just look at this big athlete. Oh, what happened to him? He got his bell wrong. Ha ha ha. And honestly, when I played football from 2003 to 2006, and I've had my share of concussions, and it was just a thing. You're like, do you know your name? I don't know. Okay, but do you know the next play? I think I do. Okay, you go straight. Great. I'm going to go straight and hit the guy who's running at me. It actually concussed. And that's just it was just how it worked back then. You just didn't know that you were in trouble. So doing high school sports and thinking that way compared to these athletes who will put back together a broken ankle and Bergeron's playing with a collapsed lung, yeah, of course they're going to go back on the ice. And of course we're not going to know this situation at hand. But now we do. Now we know what happens when you hit somebody in the head. Now we have unfortunate stories like Chris Simon, which is devastating. And I don't know if it had to do with head injuries. But for those who don't know, Chris Simon passed away. And he passed away young. I don't want to really get into it, but let's just say he didn't have a disease. He passed away young. He had a mental illness, and it took his life. And we've seen research that says head injuries and mental illness have connections. Yet this week we saw, who was it? Who's the old head of? Is it Donald Fair? I don't want to misquote this because it was a terrible quote, but basically saying that we have not seen enough research on head injuries to make it a problem. It was somebody I can't remember if it was the old person who was head of the Players Association or what. But anyway, the fact that people in hockey who have powerful jobs in hockey can still have this opinion, and we're still just letting head injuries just happen and as if they're no big deal, and then we're going to sit here and say, well, you rooted for Scott Stevens. That doesn't matter anymore.
Scott Stevens he only had 2 elbowing penalties in his entire career.
Again, but the whole thing, we can get into these semantics arguments. Scott Stevens was one of the smartest and most adaptable players in the league. He was Scott Niedermayer until he saw that Scott Niedermayer was better at it, and then became the hardest hitter in the league because that's what the Devils needed. He would have just adjusted his game to what was happening today. But you have players like this, like Ty Domi. Ty Domi would have just been a goon today. You got, I think Trouba, I don't want to put him in the same bucket as this because I think Trouba just I do think he just kind of loses himself a little bit, which isn't good, but it's better than these players because Trouba hasn't done anything this year, right? He had the bad hit on Timo last year, but I'll give it to him that it was borderline. I think it was a dirty hit, but it was borderline at least. This Rempe hit. When you do this every single game, you play 5 minutes a game, you get kicked out of 2 of them. And, they were, celebrating this guy like he was the next great thing. And, he's going to be out of the league in 2 years. He's going to get another job, just like Sean Avery or any other goon who's the light of the league. And then that's it. I know I'm going over. Do we ever guess? Did I just waste a bunch of time?
Oh, yeah. Didn't expect us
Trey.
to get on this topic. His name is Trey Matthews, Locked On Devils Podcast. Good friend of the podcast. Find him on Twitter at TreyMatt4. Trey, you're on with Sam and Nick.
What's up, guys? How you doing? I'm doing pretty well. I'm pretty exhausted from the Vegas and the West Coast swing that I was following the Devils on. A lot of traveling the last few weeks, but Good to be back in my own apartment. I'll say that.
We love that for you, Trey. I got to ask. You said you mentioned that you were traveling, which is why we have you on today. You followed the team. You kind of spoke to some people. What were your thoughts after those two games? Like, what did you come out of that? How did you feel? We'll start with that.
Honestly, it was just the same thing. Like, I didn't really have much to say to the players after the Arizona Coyotes game because it was the same exact thing, which is they got off to a slow start and they started to pick it up as the game progressed, but you knew they weren't going to win the game. And they left Kakinen out to dry. And then who came in relief? Was it was Dawes. Dawes who came in relief. Yeah, he came in relief. He shut down the door on the Coyotes, and the Devils had no answer. Basically, the only question I really asked was Curtis Lazar was like he got his career high in points. And, when he answered it, he was he wasn't really in the mood to answer it. But as soon as the cameras cut off, he actually came up and apologized to me because he was just like, hey, I'm sorry. It was just the wrong time to boast about myself, which I respect. I can't deny that. So, and I also asked Nick DeSimone, how did it feel to redeem himself? Because he had a turnover that resulted in Logan Cooley scoring. And then in the second period, he scored his first career goal as a Devil. So I asked him, what was it like to redeem yourself? He wasn't really in the mood to speak in that regards either. And I asked interim head coach Travis Green, what needs to change on the power play? Because the power play has been putrid ever since Dougie Hamilton went down with his injury. Like, they've been converting at anywhere from a 10 to 15% clip ever since Hamilton went down.
Usually close to that 10. I think it's about 11 since I don't know if it changed last night, but it was at about 11 going into last night.
Well, it's just bad. And I asked him, what needs to change? And he just said, we tried some things. We just got to keep working at it. We had Mercer in this circumstance. And it was just a cliche thing. I didn't know what to ask him. And then here's a dirty little secret about being credentialed for Vegas. And unfortunately, I'm not the first person to run into this issue. I don't know if I'll get in trouble for saying this or not, but they actually don't let people past a certain check. They don't let media pass a certain checkpoint. How in credentials, there's different labels like media or stuff like that. So if you have an all access pass, if you have an all access pass, which some of the Devils personnel had, you get to go near the locker room post game. But if your pass says media like mine, security stops you. And here I am with a bunch of other reporters from Vegas or who want to go and talk to some Devils players. We're stopped at this checkpoint until someone communicates saying, hey, we're good. And by the time they get that relayed message and let us in, it's all over. So I didn't get the chance to speak with Nico Hischier or Jake Allen after the Golden Knights game. I got to speak with Travis Green, but I was telling Sam Kassan this, which was, it wasn't really that big of a deal because it was more or less the same thing, which is they weren't good on their power play. Devils didn't have good execution. They did get off to a better start. I'll give them credit, but they still lost the game. I didn't know what to ask Jake Allen. I always say interviewing a goalie is the toughest one because whatever I want to ask him, it's most likely already been asked. How did you feel about this certain play? How did it feel to shut down the door? Things like that. I always say the goalie is the toughest one to interview, which is why I don't really ask any questions to the goalies. Or did you feel like you redeemed yourself after letting this one in? And I remember I asked Mackenzie Blackwood that question. He was like, we lost the game. You do the math, which he did have a point. It wasn't the best question to ask him, but so I wasn't really too bummed out about it. In fact, I wanted to get out of Vegas because I was exhausted at that point. But so that's basically all the behind the scenes I can give you. But the Anaheim trip was interesting. I'll tell you that. And I actually have a future article on that because I think that's when the writing was on the wall that Lindy supposedly lost the locker room.
Yeah. And listen, I've heard some things, and I got the first inkling that Lindy was going to no longer be here in the middle of the Kings game. I'll say that. I feel like I could say that now. And so a lot of people said that Jack Hughes waving somebody on is what lost Lindy his job, but I think it was decided before then. I think it was decided in Anaheim, like you said. Not that you were reporting that, but you know what I mean. Like as you alluded to, it seemed like that was just the night that it all went to heck. But let me ask you this: there's an article out on Pucks and Pitchforks today from the other Nick Tatali, about how missing the playoffs could be a good thing at this point. You know, and like there's the obvious parts like the draft pick and just kind of like, but there's the parts about the lowered expectations and kind of going to next season with a fresh set of eyes, and you know, whether it's Travis Green or somebody else, like kind of getting a fresh set of a fresh system in here would be good. What are your thoughts? When you look at this, the Eastern Conference is basically handing it to the Devils, and the Devils are handing it back. They're like, I don't want this. Thank you, though. I would not like this playoff spot. What are your thoughts? Do you think this team would benefit from making the playoffs just on this like terrible run, or do you think that they need like to get to the offseason and reset?
I think they just need to get to the offseason and reset at this point. That's not a bad thing. I actually kind of agree with that, because how much further can this team go? Okay, they squeaked their way into the playoffs. How far are they going to go in the playoffs? They're going to get knocked out in the first round, most likely. Like, that team was the team last year, the team that broke the franchise record for most wins in a single season. They were almost bounced out in the first round by the New York Rangers, and luckily the Devils exonerated the Rangers' 2-0 lead. Just some food for thought. The goaltending wasn't really all that great. The defense wasn't all that great until Akira Schmid came to the rescue. But then next year, they got exploited. But I mean, it worked for a Tampa Bay Lightning.
Can I say one thing that we don't talk about that series?
Sure.
The Devils went in with 1 day rest, and Carolina had 5 days rest going to that series. I think the NHL did the Devils dirty by not giving them an extra day. Coming off a Game 7 win against your rival, and then having to get back up for a new team with no time to study their film or see what they do right and wrong. I don't think they would have beaten Carolina. Carolina was a better team, like just full stop, a better team. But I do think the NHL did them dirty. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
I actually kind of disagree. I think more rest actually does you wrong, because like if you look in like a sport like baseball where the top seeded team gets a bye series, it usually doesn't really go their way because you're rusty, you're cold, you're cold. Whereas you got to face a team that's just won 4 games in their series and they have some decent momentum going their way. In my opinion, I think the more games you play, the better you're going to be. But that's just my personal opinion. I was actually talking.
I think we could agree they were going to lose no matter what circumstance. The Devils were being
most likely. And I was actually talking to Chico Resch about this, and Devils aggression just wasn't there. But one example I do want to give, going back to your initial question, is that it worked out for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Didn't they make the playoffs 1 year? Then they missed it, and then they sort of became a dynasty.
Yeah, there was that one season where they had. What was it? It was 2019 where they won like the record and then got knocked out of the first round. So that happened in between. But I mean, I think Devils fans would take that because right after that they went to 3 straight finals, right? So the Stanley Cup final 3 straight years, winning 2 of them. So almost
3.
But I think. Yeah, I mean, even the Knights, the defending champs, missed the playoffs. What was it? 2 years ago? You know, when everything went wrong, they had all of the injuries. So, it's there. And the Avalanche had a year where they missed the playoffs. The Oilers is another good example where they surprisingly missed the playoffs. I think that was 2019, the year after McDavid took them to the final. They missed the playoffs. There's a lot of good examples that missing the playoffs could be a good thing.
Yeah, so the one time Vegas missed the mark was 2021-2022 season, which was year 5 of being an organization. And like you said, it just was injuries. And I think the same can be said for the Devils. They've just dealt with a lot of injuries. They just have not been healthy. Jack has missed significant time. Nico has missed significant time. Dougie's significant time. Jonas Siegenthaler significant time. Eric Haula has missed some time at one point. Curtis Lazar has missed a few games. I could go on.
Yeah. There's what? I'd say 90% of the rosters miss games. The only ones who haven't is like Bratt and Mercer, right? Everybody else has pretty much missed at least a game, and most missed significant time.
Pretty much.
So let me ask you this, Trey. So this is I kind of want to look ahead. So I'm going to ask you 2 tiers of questions. both about the offseason, because I do want to look ahead. Now that we're kind of in this like mode, we're kind of looking forward. Like, how do we fix this for next season? My first question is about the draft pick. What do you want to do with that draft pick? Do you think it's best for trade fodder, or do you think, especially with like where the Devils prospects situation is again, where it's kind of middle of the pack, do you think they should really keep that and replenish the supply here?
Honestly, a few years ago, I was willing to trade away the second overall pick that the Devils had, and they used that pick to get Shimon Nemets. I was willing to part ways with that, because if you remember, there were some players available, like Matthew Tkachuk. I think he wanted out of Calgary. Kevin Fiala, he was in trade discussions. Let's see, who else were the Devils trying to pursue that offseason?
DeBrincat was the guy they could have gotten.
Yeah, DeBrincat. Johnny Gaudreau was an unrestricted free agent. What? Yeah, he was. He decided not to re-sign with Calgary and decided to. He went to Columbus. Yeah, there we go. That offseason, I still remember it, even though it happened a few years ago. But it's just like, I was willing to trade away that second overall pick, but it had to be for the right pieces. Now, fast forward to now, I mean, would that draft pick really help the Devils, if we're being completely honest? Because playoff teams don't usually worry about the draft. They worry about getting to the playoffs, which is why they're willing to part ways with their draft picks. So if you're serious about getting someone like Jacob Markstrom, UC Saros, which, by the way, is not going to happen, or another good, capable goalie, use that draft pick to help you make your case. And that's all I'm going to say, which is because maybe using that draft pick in certain trade scenarios, if it's a top 10 pick, then maybe it can help sweeten the deal if you really want to break the bank and make a splashy move.
So let's talk about splashy moves, because I'm curious of what your thoughts are on this team. There's a lot of issues with the defense. You know, you lost some pieces, and McLeod obviously isn't here anymore, and it's clear that the forward group could use something. In the bottom six, like let's say the goalie is a given. They're gonna get a goalie. They have Jake Allen now. They're probably gonna get another one. That's a given.
Here's something I worry. Mm-hmm. And actually, our buddy, the Brat Pack, put this out on social media. Now, Brat Pack will be the first to tell you, he is not a journalist. What he posts on social media is meant for comedy reasons, memes, trolling Ranger fans, whatever. But he put out this interesting point, which was, here's what I fear, that Jake Allen is going to continue to do well, and then Tom Fitzgerald is going to be like, you know what? We got our goalie. We're going to keep him as a starter. And then come next year, we're back with Vitek Vanecek Part 2.
Yeah. I just don't think he's going to do that. For two reasons. I'll give you two reasons why I don't think he's going to do that. One, we know what Allen is. Even if he has a miraculous run, even if he takes them to the playoffs, my bigger fear is that he takes them to the playoffs and they settle for Green. And I don't know if I want Green as a head coach or not, but I just haven't loved what I've seen in the totality of what this offense has turned into, going from Brunette to Green. Not saying that Brunette was the only thing last year. There was a lot that went right last year, but there's pieces that I don't love. But anyway, if Green chose me something else, my opinion can change. But then, like you said, the Allen thing, I just think that you look at it, he has 1 year left on his deal, and he's older. And you're not going to give him an extension when you're getting this prize of this guy on this pretty decent contract as a backup. I think he's making like $1.8 million or something like that. I think what you just have to do is you have to go into next season, and they're not going to fall in love with Dawes. I don't think there's enough time. They're not going to fall in love with Schmidt. I just think they have like a weird feeling about Schmidt. It just doesn't seem like that they're in love with him either way. So I just think that Markstrom, I don't think it's going to cost that much. A lot of people are saying it's going to cost a first. I think it's going to cost significantly less than everybody thinks, just because he has no trade clause and he's done with them. He's very clearly has no interest in staying in Calgary. So I think that Markstrom is probably the floor for them. They're going to go for Saros. They're going to go for Ullmark. They're going to go. I mean, I think they're going to shoot for the moon for like a Swayman or I'm trying to think of like the other people. Everybody else is just kind of like
Gibson,
meh.
Merzlikins. Saros,
I feel like they're all under. Yeah, Saros is definitely up there. I feel like Merzlikins, they would have taken him for free, but again, that contract has so many years left on it.
I
it's going to get bought out.
I talked to some people within the organization. They say Merzlikins is a bit of a head case, which is why he was not traded at the deadline. And having been in Anaheim, I spoke to some.
We got to say this about Merzlikins. Like he very publicly watched his best friend die in a tragic accident. So like, I don't know if like you come back from that. So I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, I don't know if you don't want to sign up for it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Not my words. Not my words. Not my words.
No, I hear you. I try to give context for these things just because, you know, if he is like he does, not that he deserves to be, but like that's hard to come back from. You know, your backup goalie and your best friend, you know, in that fireworks accident that was tragic.
Right.
But with Gibson had every chance in the world.
His contract scares teams. That's what some of the Ducks personnel were telling me.
And I'll tell you what, I think that they're boasting, or not boasting. That's not right. I think they're trying to like look over here at the shiny object. He has this big contract and people don't want it. The thing we're not talking about is he's not good again. And this is year 4 of him not being good. You know, so do I think that John Gibson would be better in a different situation? Like, say, like Bobrovsky has been really good when the Panthers were good, or, you know, we have a million. Linus Hallmark is a perfect example where he was kind of meh in Buffalo, gets a decent contract in Boston because he was the only goalie available, and it worked in spades. He won the Vezina Trophy. Do I think Gibson has that possibility? Sure. But signing up for, 3 more years of that? And he might not be. He might be Schneider, right? Schneider looked like the best goalie in the world and then fell apart. It might be the same thing that happened to him, and he doesn't want to get the hip surgery because it could severely hamper his career. So I don't want Gibson. I feel like Gibson and Merzlikins are under Markstrom, so I do think Markstrom's the floor. That's not a terrible floor.
No, it's not. But my thing is, like I've told people, what's it going to cost? And you say you don't think it's going to cost that much. Well, what's your ideal trade scenario then?
Yeah, I think you're going to give them a decent prospect so they could call a win. You know, I'm thinking like Haminaho. I don't think they're giving him Casey. I don't think they have to give him.
No.
Calgary's going to hate this. They're going to hate this. They're going to hate the trade. But Calgary overplayed its hand and blew it because they overplayed its hand in the media. They leaked so much information about Tom Fitzgerald's conversations with them. And it got back to Markstrom because of course it did. And he waived his no trade clause. And then that got out because Calgary was trying to force Fitzgerald's hands and they ruined the relationship with the player. So he's going to say, I want out. And I could see the New Jersey being the first team with their hand out. And Calgary only has itself to blame for this because they just mishandle it. And they have a young GM in Conroy. And they make mistakes like this about how to play the media. And most teams do it wrong at first because you saw Mike Greer do this in San Jose. And they kind of overplayed their hand. And I think they got a decent return for Meyer at the end of the day because they got what could have been 2 first-round picks. It's going to end up being a first and a second-round pick. And then Mukabadulin and Zetterlund are all players that are decent, you know, and they're going to be in the bottom 6, bottom 4. Well, he got traded for a 5th-round pick, so he didn't really do anything there. But, they had this fine. They had a fine return. Like, they didn't get an F, but they got like a C. I think that Markstrom's, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to look pretty bad at first. You're going to get Haminaho in a 3rd-round pick is what I'm thinking. Do I think he's worth more than that? Would I give more than that? I would. I'm just predicting of what I think the trade is going to look like.
I like Lenny Haminaho. I saw him during development camp, got to speak with him. I think he has a lot of potential. And I was talking to our colleague, Jersey Joe, about this. And Jersey Joe says, like, he's sort of like, I guess he plays similar to Tyler Toffoli if you need reference. For anyone who's unfamiliar with his game, that's what people compare, or that's what Jersey Joe compares Lenny Haminaho to. And I'm going to take his word for it just because, you know, Jersey Joe, he covers prospects. This is his bread and butter when covering the Devils. I mean, Lenny Haminaho, I think he definitely has a lot of upside, but like you said, if I think the Devils are at a point where they're going to try to focus more on getting assets that can help right away, not assets that can help in a few years, if that makes sense.
That's fair.
So
they might do that. They might go. Might go for like pieces that help. And I think they'd love Holtz, but I don't think the Devils have to do it.
I don't, and can I just say one thing? I don't agree with what Lindy Ruff or Tom Fitzgerald have been saying about Alexander Holtz. I think he's been a bit of a scapegoat. Has he been perfect? No. But you got one thing I love what Travis Green did in the previous game against the Penguins. Holtz makes a mistake, but you don't bench him. You just let him make that mistake and he'll learn from it and he rebounded. Let him redeem himself. That's my thing, which is like Jack Hughes, he's been a turnover machine ever since he came back from injury. But are you going to bench Jack Hughes? No. Luke Hughes, same way. Like sometimes Luke Hughes and Jack Hughes, they look like Bambi out there, but you're not going to bench the Hughes brothers. You let them play and learn so they could grow. But the thing for Alexander Holtz is, why is he the scapegoat in all this? And I don't agree with what Tom Fitzgerald says, saying that Holtz is not having a good season. I disagree. Like you said that Holtz needs to step up and that this is possibly his last chance to make anything out of it. Like they said that during exit interviews. And who knows how many goals he can have if he was just given just a few more minutes. I don't care if he's on the bottom six. I want people to know where you're at on the lines does not equal playing time. It doesn't. Mm-hmm. It just
and honestly, like the line combinations is just based on what Amanda Stein, the order in which she's written them. Like it's not. It doesn't.
Right.
It really doesn't mean more than that. But Trey Matthews.
That's where I got it from. Amanda said like lineups don't equal playing time.
Yeah. So, but Trey, I really appreciate you coming on, kind of giving your experience. Spend a couple minutes, just let everybody know where they can find your stuff. I know you're on Pucks and Pitchforks. You say you got a piece coming up, but let them know what's coming up on Locked On. Let everybody know what you got in the pike.
Well, after taking a bit of a hiatus once again of just trying to recover from traveling all around the West Coast with the New Jersey Devils, I hope to get back to posting a lot more consistently. I apologize to my audience for keeping you in the dark, but hope to be back in full swing. So you can find Locked On Devils wherever you get your podcast from. You can get it on YouTube, over 2,000 subscribers. You can follow me on Twitter or X at TreyMatt4. And like you said, you can find my stuff at Pucks and Pitchforks. Excuse me.
We love that. We look forward to your next piece, Trey. We look forward to the next podcast. We look forward to the next time you come as a friend of the podcast on the Let's Go Devils podcast, Day of the Fan Address. Trey, I appreciate you sharing your expertise. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That is Trey Matthews of Locked On Devils. That was good. That was real good.
You love Trey.
Love it. Love it.
Check your phone real quick.
Oh. Hold on a sec. Oh, okay.
Just real quick. I'll be right.
Oh, me or you? I wasn't sure.
No, you. I need you to.
Oh, all right. Right now, I'm covering for Nick because he needs to go off camera. But let me just tell you, that West Coast swing, that West Coast trip that we all went to, Beer Baron, myself, Scotty, Little Steve of Hockey on Tap, Billy Dean, Hockey on Tap, and Shorts Guy. He's also both Hockey on Tap and the Let's Go Devils podcast. The Muller Arena, freaking awesome. Awesome. And apparently, one more year. They're going to be back for one more year, possibly. And I see Nick is giving me the thumbs up, but his background is not quite there yet. So, Nick, if you wouldn't mind. Something happened. All right, Nick. Well, we'll go full. We'll go two-shot. Did I improvise enough?
Yeah. Oh,
Oh, boy. All right. So I'm going full screen, technical difficulties again. And this is what happens when you're live, and you're unprepared. But that's okay. This is the Let's Go Devils podcast. We can figure it out. Anyway, all right. I got the thumbs up. Nick, you good?
You're seeing my mess. It's okay. Yeah. My so what happened is so I usually charge the computer before the podcast, and it must have just unplugged itself or something because my computer almost died in the middle of that interview. So I had to plug myself in. So excuse the look, but this is where we are, Sam. Just pretend this is scenery.
It's a bunker.
It is a bunker.
That's what it is. I mean, if anybody wants to see my bunker, I mean, look, you know what? My bunker can be messy too. Here, let me get my camera. If Nick, actually, my bunker. There's the fish tank in my bunker. People don't realize I got a fish tank back there. Anyway,
it fell out again. I don't know what's going on here.
What's going on? What fell out?
The thing, the plug.
Nick, I got you a MacBook Pro.
Sam, this plug is like 3 feet long. I need to get an extension cord.
Okay. You want me to get you?
It's not. And honestly, it's not even your fault. My house has like the plugs in the weirdest places. So it's literally only on one side of the room. So
that's okay.
And it was fine before because I had a long plug, but I just got to get an extension cord. Not a big deal. We're fine. Let's move on. Let's talk about Sam. What do you want? Do you want to make the playoffs?
Of course I do.
You want to have that pregame show at American Whiskey because that's electric.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, it's not for selfish reasons. I just think that back in November and December, I felt this team could be like the Florida Panthers. And right now you're heading to the last week of March. There's no room for error, and they gotta be streaking right now. Jake the Snake Allen has been phenomenal since he let up that one goal, the second goal against the Dallas Stars. I thought he was phenomenal against the Golden Knights on Sunday, which, by the way, I annoyed a lot of people at that game. Let me tell you though, because you have a young baby and never mess around with Girl Scout brownie troops. Let me tell you.
You get beat up by little girls, Sam.
Pretty much verbally, and it's like I swear to you, they're like a tiny militia. You better and don't mess with them if they're Golden Knights fans. They're vicious.
These are people like selling in Vegas. You've seen how aggressive people are selling in Vegas.
Yeah. So, all kidding aside, that's actually a great sign that you've got these young Golden Knights fans, and hockey is growing in Vegas, and you want to see that. You want to see, as much as that annoying that fan base is, surprisingly they're annoying. But good fans, though. Very good fans.
Yeah, I mean, listen, every fan base can be annoying. You know, it's...
Oh, yeah, it's including ours.
Yeah, of course. Our fan base has annoyed the heck out of me this year. Because do you know what I hate about seasons like this, Sam?
What's that?
There are a lot of fans that are just stuck in this negativity bubble, and they disappear when something good happens. It's weird. Like, I don't know how you live your life this way. But this almost proves them right. And I hate that. I hate that. And I'm with you. If you told me today that they could either make the playoffs or not, and it was up to me, I would say make the playoffs. Because I do think that there's a little inkling that this can be a Florida Panthers team. But they haven't shown it to me yet. But there's just the talent is there.
The Jake the Snake. I'm telling you, they can feed off of his energy. They can feed off of it.
And if this is Timo, what you really need is a second line. to play up to how Brad, Timo, and not even Brad, it's Nico and Timo. You need a second line to kind of come up to their level. And Jack Hughes is just a different guy. He's injured, right? He's got to be injured.
That's the speculation. I mean, when he took...
I don't think it's a shoulder.
You don't think so?
I don't think it's a shoulder. No, I think it's a wrist. I think it's an elbow. I think it's something like that. Because...
Well, I'm thinking the arm.
Thing.
I'm thinking the arm area because I saw him in Vegas wind up for a slap shot, and it looked a little awkward.
Mm-hmm.
It looked a
really?
little
okay, maybe,
yeah.
And I could be wrong, but just from what I see, so here's why I have my theory. His speed is still there, so like you said, doesn't look like it's a lower body at all. His lower body looks like it's tip top shape, which is good because the upper body is usually fixable. But his passes are very off, and he should be the best passer in the league. But his passes are off, especially in tight, tight spaces. But he'll get it through this tight space, but it's behind him, like it's behind Brad or it's behind Nico or whatever. So his instincts are correct, and he get it into a space, but into the wrong part of the open space. And it's happened like 6 or 7 times where I'm like, why did he pass it there? Like, you had an easy goal, you had a 2-on-1 situation, and it was just a bad pass. And this guy is still taking a ton of shots. And the team as a whole has been missing more shots. But I will take this. I will take what you saw in the Knights game and what you saw last night, where they throw the puck at the net. Like, hope that good things happen, right? I'll take that 10 times out of 10 over looking for the perfect opportunity, which they've been doing. They were doing it at the end of the
or the hardest shot, because sometimes they're taking putting up some BBs up there, and let me tell you, it's going wide. Just
or gets blocked.
Yeah, or it's blocked. Yeah, that's true too. I mean, if it's blocked, it's probably better defense, right? So, but again, it's right now. There's just not enough time in the season to keep on losing. So they got to concentrate on tomorrow. I think it was Jake Allen that said that the Winnipeg Jets were the biggest challenge down the stretch. I thought I saw.
I mean, I think yeah. I mean, if he said that, maybe that's just a solid for Toffoli. I know they weren't teammates, but Toffoli's an old friend. They have some hard games down the stretch. They have another one with the Rangers. I think they have another one in Carolina, right? Yeah. Maybe they have another game with Carolina.
I'll tell you, the last 2 games of the season is going to be interesting because you play the Flyers on a Saturday at Wells Fargo Center, and then the Islanders on Monday at home. Last game of the season for the Devils.
I tried to get tickets to that Flyers game. Impossible.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I could get them. They're just really expensive. I don't feel.
Well, okay, all right. That's a big difference. So the prices are up.
Yeah, I mean, you could get a ticket to anything at this point. Mm-hmm. You could get a ticket to Taylor Swift. You're just paying $10,000. So I'm looking at their schedule. Like they got a game against the Leafs in Toronto. Like you said, they play Winnipeg tomorrow.
Ottawa on Saturday. They got to beat Ottawa on Saturday.
Yeah, and then they have a back-to-back with the Penguins and the Rangers, and then later that week they have a back-to-back with the Senators and the Predators, and then they have back-to-back games against the Leafs, one home, one away. And then, as you mentioned, the Flyers and the Islanders. Sam, you got 3 losses left for the rest of the season. If they lose 4 games, there's 0 chance they make the playoffs. If you lose 3 games, you still might miss the playoffs. But you got 3 losses left. And you got 3 games against the Leafs. You got a Rangers game. They don't have a Hurricanes game. I was wrong about that. But they have Winnipeg, the Islanders twice, who are desperate. Buffalo, who is also desperate. Sam, it's over has a little bit too much finality for me to say that it's over, but I can safely say that, one loss to a bad team, it's over. If you lose to Ottawa, if you lose to even Buffalo, if you lose to Buffalo, or if you lose one of these Islanders games, if you lose to the Flyers, it's over.
Well,
you can't afford it because you play two good teams.
You got to get 2 solid points if you want to move in the standings. You can't just go into overtime with Buffalo.
Yeah. You especially can't go to overtime with Buffalo. You can't go to overtime with the Islanders. You can't go to overtime with these teams.
Yeah.
that are you're fighting.
Yeah, because you could be in the negative 1 point. So. Yeah,
you need to secure 2 points against all the teams that you're fighting with. I think they're done with Washington. They just had a bad season against these teams that they have rivalries with. Bad against Carolina, bad against the Rangers, bad against the Capitals, bad against these teams. The only team they're good against is the Penguins, and it's just for some reason their system just works really well against the Penguins. And
it's because we're built like the Penguins.
Yeah, it's like we're a younger version of the Penguins. It's like you facing your younger brother, but your younger brother turned 25. And you're 35.
We basically have the leftovers of the Penguins,
Well, yeah. So, yeah. Let me ask you. I'm going to ask you something, and then we can kind of do our plugs and call it a night. But let's say they get a goalie. Let's say they get Markstrom, and that's the end of that. What do you do with the rest of the money? You were going to give it to Toffoli. Do you still give it to Toffoli, or do you get
why
Markstrom? Or
why Markstrom? I think he sucks.
He definitely doesn't suck. He's been really good this year. His numbers bear out, and he's had really good seasons. He was bad last year or the year before. I can't remember. He's only really
what I mean by
sucks
is, he's on the back nine of his career. I mean, do we really want somebody that old hitting 35?
I just don't think you're not getting Saros unless you give up Mercer and more.
Oh, I'm willing to now. I said that on the Woo report. I changed my whole attitude on everything.
Well, is it because you've soured on Mercer or because you're desperate for a goalie?
Neither.
Well, it's got to be one or the other.
No, I'm not sour. You're going to have to give up a great asset to get a great asset back. I think there's more of a need for Saros than there is for Mercer in his position.
I just feel like because then you got to pay Saros.
Yeah, but
Saros only has 1 year left on his contract, and you're going to give him an 8-year deal as a 30-year-old. At that point, you should have just got Hellebuck. Then you failed because you blew the season. If you're going to do that, you should have just got Hellebuck.
I don't think they'll ever give him maybe a 5-year deal, but I don't think Fitzgerald would. I'm sure he's going to seek an 8-year deal.
Why would he sign a 5-year deal?
Do you think anybody else would give him an 8-year deal?
Winnipeg gave Hellebuck an 8-year deal.
Yeah, but that's Hellebuck.
Saros is just as good as Hellebuck. He's the same exact age at free agency. I'm just telling you, he's not signing a 5-year deal. If you're getting Saros, you're signing him through 38. And if Corey Schneider's on you, you're stuck. That's going to be an anchor on your team. With Markstrom, you're signing up for 2 years of him.
And let your goalies develop.
Yeah. If you get Saros, just trade Dawes at that point. Just trade Dawes, trade Schmid. Schmid's probably going to get traded. The story that John Bailey found, and he put together something for Pucks and Pitchforks on Schmid was eye-opening. And his agent going out, and I know it's a overseas publication, and those usually get the stories, like the Finnish ones and sometimes the Russian ones. I think this one was Swiss because it was in German. Saying that they tried to get a 4-year deal signed or something, or what was it, a $4 million deal signed this offseason, and the Devils said no. I think there's just a lot of sour grapes with how Schmid was handled. So, you're looking at Dawes. I truthfully, I think Dawes is the guy. I know he's had some bad games and his numbers overall don't look good, but it's because he was wholeheartedly mismanaged every single time he's been called up. He carried the Devils that one year where they had 7 goalies, and then they mismanaged him because they were desperate, and it failed. And then the same thing happened this year, where they got the Devils were desperate and played him every single game. And this dude on rest looks like Superman. And then when he has no rest, he looks terrible. And, like, that's not great because, like, in the playoffs, you're not going to have a lot of rest. But, he's got to build up that stand-up. What is he, 23 years old? I think Dawes is that dude. And he was a great prospect coming out of the draft. I think it was the second goalie taken that year, taken in the third round. You get Markstrom. He sits behind Markstrom and Allen for a year. He's your third goalie. If one of them goes down, like, you have a really good goalie to back them up, like, to come up, to get called up. And I think that that's an ideal situation. I've been calling for Markstrom since early January, before this Markstrom train started, before Markstrom was even, a candidate in a lot of these. And I'm going to stick to it because I am worried, though, because, like, this is the best Markstrom you were going to get, right? He's having a great season, and you were trying to get back in the playoff race. This was the ideal opportunity to get him, but Calgary put such a premium on him, and they just ended up not trading him at all. And, like, whatever the case with the owner, like, I don't know if you saw the reports that the owner put the kibosh on the trade. You can't do anything when that happens. But I just think they're going to, like, the hand is going to get forced. I think, like I said, I think it's going to be like a Haminaho and a third-round pick. Like, I don't think it's going to be a big return because they just blew it. They blew their hand. So, say love it. That's my thoughts. I think Saros is going to be too expensive in trade, too expensive in contract. I think you're going to look at Allmark, and I just think Allmark is a product of the Bruins. Or I'm afraid that he might be a product of the Bruins. I think he's a good goalie either way. But is he a great goalie? Is he a Stanley Cup winner goalie? Because he was also pretty bad in the playoffs, right? He got knocked out in the first round last year. And then all the other ones, like Gibson, like, please, like, stop. I'm over that. Like, I don't even want any part of that because he's been bad again. And Merzlikins, if they get Merzlikins, like, I kind of give up on that. Like, you're going to – I would put more money on a rebuild before a Stanley Cup if you get Merzlikins.
Very interesting. It's a different approach. To me, I want Saros long term, and I don't want to revisit this issue about a 1A goalie.
That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, I'm just tired. I mean, how long has it been going on since Corey Schneider's injury?
Yeah, I mean, Blackwood had 2 great years, and then the injury started mounting. You thought you fixed it with Bernier, his hip went out. You thought you fixed it with Crawford. I mean, Crawford was always a short-term thing, but it just appeared that his medicals weren't right, and he needed to just leave the game. Well, they got one other guy that I'm not thinking of.
And then what happens if Markstrom gets injured? I mean, when you get goalies up there in age.
Well, that would be the point, is that you have Dawes and Allen, and I think that's a respectable combo, at least over what we've had this year.
Yeah, but I'm at the point right now that let both Schmid and, well, I think Schmid's gone, but Dawes have one more year full time in the AHL, and then bring him up as to be the Dawes Saros combo.
Yeah, I don't hate that idea. I just hate the contract you're going to have to give Saros on top of the price. If it was one or the other, if it was like you give him Mercer and he signs a 5-year deal for $8 million a year, okay, that stinks. I love Mercer. I don't think you should trade him, but if that's the situation, fine. But I don't think that's the case, right? Or if you trade like a smaller package, like you trade this year's first round pick and then another piece, then I would do it. You give them the 8-year deal and you take the risk and you buy it out if it just doesn't go well. Whatever. You deal with it. But to do both, it's such a risk to your dynasty. I don't even want to say dynasty. It's such a risk to your prospects as a championship caliber team. It's ironic, right? Because Saros makes you a championship caliber team, but giving him that contract and losing the pieces that it would take to get him also puts it at risk.
Do you think
it's such an ironic truth?
Do you think Barry Trotz by the off season could really be on a different planet? He's got to come down on the price. He's not even. We're not even on the same page.
I don't think he thinks he does, though. Like, you heard that. Like, did you see the story I wrote about the interview he did? He did an interview in Nashville on radio publicly. He put his name on it where he said that Tom keeps calling me and he's the one who needs a goalie, so I'm going to keep the price where I'm at. And then Tom came out of the press conference and said, he thought, what did he say? He was being extorted about goaltending? Like, you don't use that word lightly.
Yeah, but that's now, but not off season. You're in a different world by next off season, because then he could risk losing Saros to free agency without getting anything in return. This year, time was not on Fitzgerald's side with Trotz, but once you get to the off season, anything can happen.
And I wrote this in January that I thought the momentum was going Fitzgerald's way when it was like, when everybody said, well, you're desperate, I'll just wait you out. And waiting him out caused a lot of other teams. And it was right because Carolina didn't end up trading for a goalie, I don't think. I know they claimed one, but I don't think they traded for one. Toronto didn't trade for a goalie. Did LA trade for a goalie? They didn't, right? Nobody else really traded for a goalie. So the Devils got what they wanted. Then they got Kakkonen for a salary. Like, I would have traded a 3rd-round pick to get rid of Vitek Vanacek's salary next year. And they got it off for a 7th-round pick. And they got Kaapo Kakkonen. And then on top of that, you get Jake Allen. What did they trade? They traded the 3rd-round pick, right? That they got with the Foley trade? Or maybe it was their own 3rd-round pick. They traded a 3rd-round pick in the Jake Allen trade. The prices were weird this year. They were very high on that Tuesday, and that was before the Devils were selling. And I think what happened is they told Toffoli, like, hey, we're going to trade you. And they didn't want to go back on that. And this is just pure speculation. I don't have this info, but that's probably what happened, is that they told Toffoli they were going to get traded, so they took the best price they had. They put him in a situation they probably said yes to because they want to resign him. He was very open about that. He wants to resign Toffoli. But yeah.
Well, plus,
I went on
mean,
for 10 minutes.
the other thing about Markstrom, again, I'll make age a factor. Tom Fitzgerald has not had great luck with signing goaltenders 34, 35 or older.
True.
They've all sucked.
You're not making bad points.
Yeah, so those are my points.
Yeah. I mean, it's a risk either way. There's no Hellebuck. And honestly, like, I'm trying to think if I think it was a mistake to not go for Hellebuck. Because I hate that contract. But he's probably going to win the Vezina this year. Do I think it was a mistake to not get Hellebuck?
I don't think it was it was not a mistake. The team wasn't ready for Hellebuck.
Why not?
The defense, the rookies, all that.
It's the goalie. I'm telling you, it's the goalie.
Everybody keeps on saying that it's the goalie. It's the goalie. It's more than the goalie. Trust me.
I'm not saying this team is perfect. I'm not saying there's not issues on this team. But you think if they had Connor Hellebuck this whole year, they missed the playoffs?
They're not winning the Stanley Cup.
They don't have to. They're really early in this process. Do you think with Saros next year they could win the Stanley Cup?
With Saros? Well, a lot more has to happen than just Saros.
I mean, you got like a year of seasoning for Luke Hughes and Nemitz. You got a year of seasoning for Ball. Like, I assume you get more help on the defense. You're not going to get a superstar. You don't have the money for that.
It all depends on who the coach is.
That's true.
I mean, again, there's no magic bullet here. I know there's all these, analytics, about Jake Allen in the last 3 games and all that kind of stuff. But again, the defense has been terrible all year. I mean, it hasn't been pretty.
I still think it's the system. The defensive system's bad.
I think it's also coaching.
I've said it like 100 times on this podcast. I think like Luke Hughes is making mistakes, and Kevin Ball has made a ton of mistakes, and Brendan Smith has just been bad. And, John Marino is just, I don't know what happened. I'm hoping that he's just not acclimating to the system, but he's allowed more goals than I think there's only like 3 or 4 players that have allowed more goals than him on the ice. And he's been out for the past couple of games, so that might have changed. But last time I checked, he allowed, I think it's 70-something goals with him on the ice at even strength. It's a ridiculous number.
How many different pairing partners did John Marino have this year?
I mean, it can't be more than 5.
I mean,
right?
He was put in an unnatural position.
That's true. I forgot they put him on the left side.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
He was put with the partners that were struggling. So, again,
I just don't think Siegenthaler and Marino are this bad next year. I just can't see it. You don't just forget how to play hockey like that. I think he's injured. So I think that has a lot to do with it. Obviously he's injured. He's missing games. But I think he's been injured for most of the season. Because there's just something off with him. Siegenthaler, I don't know what happened. This was the sad thing about the Rempe hit, is that Siegenthaler was playing much better after his first injury. After he came back from the broken foot, I don't know if he just had time to reset, but he was much better, much better. So I just think they're going to bounce back. And if they don't think that, they're going to trade one of them. They have long-term contracts. Fitzgerald will figure it out. Somebody will take a shot on them. They got really cheap contracts. So somebody will give them a shot. Needing a defensive defenseman, they have a good chance to bounce back. Here's the thing, though, Sam, is that we hear a lot about Severson and Graves. We saw what Graves is doing for Pittsburgh last night. He's just having a terrible season. He wouldn't have fixed anything. And Severson's having a terrible season in Columbus. They got paid a lot of money, and I just think I'm trying, Sam, this is what I'm trying to figure out is what changed between last year and this year with the defense. Because the system was so perfect for them last year. And they changed it. They're clearly playing a different game. Last year they prioritized possession with things like face-offs and things like aggressive forechecking. But this year they're prioritizing positioning and possession, but those two things don't mesh. You have to go out of position to steal possession. So they're just out of position all the time. But they want to stay in position, so all they do is poke check, and they don't want to hit anybody because they don't want to fall out of it. It's just, Sammy, it's just I will say it one more time. The system is not good. So I think that you're going to see a lot of resets with that. I think you're going to see a new coach in the defense, whether Travis Green gets the job or not. I think you're going to see a lot of changes on the defense, whether it's personnel. I don't think they get more than 2 players, and one of them would probably be a 7th guy. I think you got to replace Smith. I like Smith as a guy. I think he was good for the room last year. I think he made a lot of sense as a signing, but it was almost like remember when Lovejoy was out of position and you just kept having to put him on the first line and he was terrible, and then they put him on the third line. You're like, oh, this guy is good on the third line. 14, 15 minutes a game. So anyway, we're overtime. And we're talking about Ben Lovejoy. So I think that's
yeah,
it.
This podcast has gone off the rails. We're talking about Ben Lovejoy. And
I love Ben Lovejoy. He really turned his
Penguins leftovers. That's what we are.
That was bad because you got Lovejoy, you got Bo Bennett, you got John Sebastian Day. You were just taking every Penguin that was available was coming to the Devils, and none of them were Sidney Crosby, so it didn't really matter.
Yeah. So what are you going to plug?
Pucksandpitchforks.com. So I referenced a piece from Nick Natale where he talked about the reason why it's a good thing if the Devils miss the playoffs. We have a new one from Jesse. Jesse spoke about Curtis McDermott. I was like, why do you want to write about Curtis McDermott as your first one? And he made a good pitch, and I was like, great, go write about it. He did it, and so that one's up. I pinpointed the 5 moments where the season went to hell. That wasn't fun, but I did it. So go read it and have not fun with me. And yeah, I mean, there's a couple other pieces up there, but pucksandpitchforks.com. Go read it right now. We'll have new pieces. My top 25 prospects is coming out. I want to say next week. There's some changes happening at Fansided that I just have to finagle and make sure that they don't impact Pucks and Pitchforks. Like, we're not going anywhere. Like, don't worry about that. But we might change like the structure of how we do some of our formatting. So I just have to wait for that to see when I'm putting up the top 25 prospects. The list is done, Sam. It's kind of interesting. I had to get creative with some of it.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. I'm going to be at American Whiskey on Saturday before and after the game with Short Sky for the Devils take on the Ottawa Senators. Hope to see you there. We'll have some Man Crew brew. And also April 3rd, we're looking to do a viewing party, Devils Rangers at Stagehouse Tavern. More information forthcoming. Go to joinourcrew.com for the latest on that. So that's all I have. Also, JCB Architectural. We might have a free ticket giveaway tomorrow. So, yeah. Going to have to figure that one out for tomorrow's game. Pair of tickets, row 1, somewhere in the 100 section. I almost want to go to the game myself and shout, Jake the Snake, every time he touches the puck. It annoys people for whatever reason, or at least Vegas Golden Knights fans. It might be equal opportunity to annoy our own fans, but I don't care. I love Jake the Snake. All right. Well, I'll see you later, folks. Thank you, Nick. Thank you all those tuning in. Dropping the podcast at midnight. Till next time, let's go Devils.